continuing here from Skokstudio Vocal Instruction in Mentor, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland, where we are in our first of the two-part interview with the founder and owner of Skokstudio Vocal Instruction, Heidi Skok. And Heidi, it's nice to be here doing this with you today.
Thank you, same. I feel the same, Hugh. Thank you.
Sounds good. And so, how about first, before we get into everything, why don't you just tell viewers a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Well, obviously, my name is Heidi Skok, and I'm just somebody who really loves to sing and teach voices. And that's why I founded Skokstudio Vocal Instruction. I haven't had the easiest vocal journey of my life. And so my goals are to really help singers to be able to have a much easier journey than I did.
We're going to get right into those experiences you've had in your voice career. But first, I want to start off with talking the fact the dream starts when you're a little girl growing up. And so what is your earlier experiences and how they have translated into later years now?
Well, I always had a very low voice. From the time I was 4 years old, it was a very, very low voice, and people always thought there was something wrong with my voice. And so teachers would always tell my parents something's wrong with her voice. And my dad was funny. He would say, well, haven't you heard Carol Channing's voice? So my parents were supportive. And, it took a long time, though, for me to really find my voice, because when I was just 12 years old, at my first voice lessons, I had a teacher who pushed my level of range up much higher, which really brought, in many ways, a 20-plus year career as a soprano when I really wasn't a soprano, and brought some difficult experiences for me along the way. But it's amazing I even got as far as I did, including singing at the Metropolitan Opera. But my early childhood has really defined now where I am as a contralto.
When you were younger, Heidi, what kind of goals did you have in place?
I always wanted to be a singer. From the time I was 4 years old, I was singing in the barn to my parents' animals. We lived on a farm. I would listen to songs, pop songs in the 70s on the radio, and I would be able to sing them back many hours later in the original key. I knew that I was a low voice. I was a belter. I sang pop music. I was just always somebody who was disciplined. I was raised until I was 12 by a grandmother who really instilled a sense of discipline in me and a work ethic. And I just knew that, I didn't know how to do anything else. So singing was my goal, and I was a part of all the musicals in the high school, and I just had a wonderful journey, and it led me into college.
You just mentioned something about how you were starting. A big part of your career happened in high school as well. Tell me a little bit about your high school experiences.
My high school was wonderful. I had the best director in the world. I'll mention her name because I thought she was so fabulous. Myrna Rutkowski. She was so wonderful. When I was a sophomore, most places would say, sophomores don't get the leading role, but Myrna believed in talent. And so I came in as a 10th grader, and I landed that lead role over a senior as Guinevere in Camelot, and I won Best Actress that year with the Rotary Club. So then the next year I went on as Aldonza in Man of La Mancha, and our whole production won Best Musical. So Myrna really, really, really set the stone for me. She was wonderful.
I know you've mentioned a big thing too is you were always practicing in your college days too. You attended Carnegie Mellon. You're a graduate there. Tell me a little bit about the times you would practice in college in those years.
Carnegie Mellon was an interesting experience because the first year as a freshman, I had a voice teacher that I ended up switching out from. But interestingly enough, dear friends, she was a contralto. But at that time, my voice had been pushed up, and nobody had the invention in their minds, the inspiration to discover what I really was. So I ended up switching out from that contralto teacher to another teacher. And I made it through college, graduated with honors, but I always wondered why I would be so vocally fatigued at the ends of my practices. I was always in the practice room. I was always practicing. And, but it was it wasn't a smooth road because my voice was always, I was always wondering why I was so tired from singing. And it shouldn't be that way.
When did you first discover yourself as a contralto?
Well, I think as a 4-year-old, I was always that low voice, and then unfortunately it got pushed higher. But in 2019, after I had switched, actually in 2006, I should start there, I was singing a gig with the Albany Symphony Orchestra. It was Rafe Vaughan Williams' Benedicite, and at the very end, as a soprano soloist, it had to be natural. And I just couldn't figure out why I couldn't get into that. And I was singing it over and over and over again. And till the point where I injured my voice and had to take a couple weeks off in silence. But that really made me discover that I needed to go lower. And so I started 10 years as a mezzo, but again, I was raising children and didn't really have the time to dedicate, even though I did sing at Carnegie Hall and some other big, halls around the world as a mezzo, but it still felt too high. So in 2019, it came to me to start singing pop music again and get back into that chest belt voice that I had so well as a kid and that had been taken from me from those earlier teachers. And so I got back to playing the piano and singing pop, and I made some recordings. You can find them on YouTube. And it was just wonderful. And then last summer in 2021, I did an opera program online. And I sang, and my esteemed colleagues there said, "Heidi, where have you been? You're a contralto." So it was wonderful. They really defined some rep for me. It was the beginning of what has been a wonderful journey in the last year I've returned to the opera world as a professional contralto in addition to my teaching.
I know one of the biggest accomplishments, and for those viewers here watching us today, is you sang at the Metropolitan Opera for 12 years. Tell viewers what that experience was like.
That was a very interesting experience filled with many, many learning experiences. I was discovered by the Met in 1991 when I was on the radar to go to Wolf Trap Opera as a soprano. And Wolf Trap Opera is a huge launching pad for young singers in America today and then. And so I got there on my own by sending in a recording. The Met discovered me, asked me to come and sing for them, which I did. And within 10 minutes, I was invited into their Young Artist Development Program. And it was very interesting. I had left a contract with Pittsburgh Opera to go to the Met. It was a difficult 3 years because it seemed that the Met brought me there, but they didn't really know what to do with me. And so I kind of felt like I was floundering. I managed to do a lot of good things, which is unbelievable. But I would have to wonder, I'd be looking at the schedule every day, now what's going to happen next and when am I going to be able to rest, because my voice was always so tired after singing the soprano.
And I know also too, one of the other big accomplishments throughout the course of your life is you previously have ran Resonance Opera at 2 different stages. Just, do you want to recap those experiences too as well for viewers too?
Sure. I've always loved to help singers, and so in 2008, I had a couple of wonderful students who helped me put together a not-for-profit organization called Resonance. And so we ran it for 2 summers in 2009 and 2010 in Albany, New York, out of the College of St. Rose. It was a 3-week summer operatic festival for young singers, and it was wonderful. We did a couple of good productions, and we had a great time. But then Resonance is, if anybody knows anything about a not-for-profit in the arts community, it takes money and people to help, and we ran out of both. So I shelved it, and then after a personal experience in my life of needing to move back home to Cleveland, Ohio in 2015, we brought Resonance back out 2017 and 2018 and 2019. And we had some very successful seasons, also producing some opera for young singers around the country. Then again, COVID hit, and so Resonance is again shelved, but we do have some ideas for Resonance that will most likely be solely online. So as soon as we find some scholarship money for that, we will be working on producing Resonance productions again.
And I know one of the big things too in this business is getting your start. We mentioned earlier how you got your start. What word of advice do you have for any young person who's trying to get into voice or to have a career in singing?
You have to have persistence. You have to have persistence. That's really what it comes down to. I've had so many difficult experiences, and if I had quit after every difficult experience, we would not be sitting here today talking. Because there's going to be a lot of difficult experiences, and that's part of the growth. That's part of your growth pattern. So you have to have a sense of persistence and a sense of willingness and also a sense of forgiveness. You have to be willing to forgive the hard spots and the people that seem to have given you the hard spots. That's hugely, hugely important. And to forgive yourself too.
Well, we appreciate the time here in part one, and we can't wait to see you in part two, and for you to actually sit down and talk about Skokstudio Vocal Instruction.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Appreciate it.
All right. You just heard from Heidi Skok. She just shared her life, her stories, and her experiences for viewers to learn throughout their life as well. Hey, don't forget, we still have another part coming up. Heidi now is actually going to go into all the details of Skokstudio Vocal Instruction. So until then, we will see you there on part two.